fingers of Mr. Nat King Cole introduce Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politics, and perspectives.
I thought you were going to say that Jim had nimble fingers, and he really does.
Well,
he's got to pop up and down like popcorn.
His fingers are especially nimble at that keyboard when the cat's laying around in front of him, and he has to move the cat in order to get the switches. By the way, where is Kitty this morning? Okay,
she'll be back.
Kudos
hopefully
this morning.
Without a bird.
We want to get right down to a familiar guest, and we're very appreciative of her taking her time to come back today. But we've got some interesting things to talk about as far as elections are concerned. But Sally, you'll remember we always try to start a Viewpoint with a kudo or two, and I guess probably it would be appropriate to. This is Pigs and Swigs Week, and these things never take place in any community without a lot of folks chipping in and volunteering. So let's have some kudos to the folks who are having. Chris Grau, who will tell you that he couldn't do that without a lot of his volunteers. Young man has done a great job in bringing attraction that not many of us think about, and he's making he's become a barbecue expert, and in his own right. And as a matter of fact, he told us when he was up here that he had a rig delivered, especially made just for him.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, kudos to those. By the way, I think maybe this kudos due some folks who really work hard to get to work. As you and I, and any of us go back and forth on Woodlawn Road, we see people walking along the highway, and they're walking to and from work. And yesterday, I saw this person walking, and the old caveat: don't pick up anybody on the highway. That's obviously and correct caveat. But that these are people going to work. You just know that. So I stopped and picked up this person. They worked at Thornton's. Now that's a long way. That's about as far west as you can get.
Yeah.
And they lived close to the west side of Lincoln, but it was a long walk. And we've seen them, you and I, all of us have seen them out there when the weather's pretty snarky. So I think kudos is due to those folks who, rather than work the system and sit back and take a dole or a handout or a poor me attitude, by God, they get on their feet and they walk to work. So good for them. So I think that's fair. Oh, another little aside. Last night, I happened to watch Henry Kissinger being interviewed by Charlie Rose. It was a fascinating interview. Really interesting. Of course, Rose got some really interesting people there. And he's not like you and I. He just sits back and lets his guests talk.
Oh.
so maybe we ought to sit back and let our guests talk after once we can. As soon as the guest performs their house duties by letting the cat in the studio. Why don't you? This
is a laid-back operation.
This is a big city operation here.
Well,
folks.
I heard the cat crying, and I knew she wanted in, so I let her in.
Well, the two of us, between us, we can't hear for diddle,
I'm a cat person. I have a cat.
You are?
Okay. Well, let's make it official, if you please, introduction of our guest today.
Oh, gosh, yes. And we're awfully happy to have her.
Yes,
I mean, this girl is Busy. Sally Turner is the Logan County Clerk. We have a special election coming up that we're going to talk about. In fact, let's just maybe start there, Sally. We've got so many things to talk about. But there must be rules and regulations and policies and procedures in place in the event that something like this does occur.
Exactly.
And our being here in Illinois, you might know it would have to occur.
And it's very costly.
Oh, no doubt. But you've figured your way around some of the cost at any rate. And how were you allowed to do that? The procedures must allow for this consolidation.
Sure. Okay, well, let's start with the governor had to set the date for the primary. And so that had to be at least 45 days before the primary. That's so we could get military ballots out, which is very important. So we had to have that time frame. So what they did is they scheduled it for July 7th for the primary. And as you know, a primary, you have to choose either Republican or Democrat ballot. So the primary will be July 7th. And then the following general election, which is after we find out who gets elected or nominated in the primary, will be September 10th. What we hoped to do was to have the election in all the polling places that were previously scheduled. However, the Christian Church for East Lincoln, we usually go to the Lincoln Christian Church, and they were being used that day. So we had to try and come up with something else. Well, our something else that we came up with was to move everyone to Jefferson Street Christian Church. And we sent every voter in East Lincoln out a letter and also put an absentee application if that inconvenienced them. So everyone will vote at a Lincoln. The good thing at a Lincoln or Jefferson Street Christian Church in Lincoln, the good thing about it is if you're in Lincoln and you don't know which polling place is yours, you're going to be in there. So you'll get directed to the correct spot where your election judges. That's the good part. The way that this can happen is because these precincts are all right next to each other. So that gives us that availability to be able to do this. And also, it's a special election, and we have to do special things in order to figure all these different problems or changes out. And one of the problems I mentioned to you earlier, Judy, was the law that passed last year that went into effect for the November election of last year. We had what was called same-day registration, and it wasn't in effect. It skipped the February and April elections of this year and then went into effect June 1st of this year. Well, none of us knew that we were going to have this special election, so we all assumed that same-day registration was going to start in March in the presidential. But those of us in the 18th Congressional District, we have to deal with that in July and September. The counties with 150,000 population or more have to have same-day registration in all their polling places. Those of us that have 150,000 or less have to have same-day registration in the precinct of which we have, of which the 20% of the population, if that's in that precinct, we have to have same-day registration. So for us, we will have same-day registration at the office of the county clerk, just like we did in November. November 14 was like a trial period. They tried this out to see if it would work. So anyone that fails to meet the guidelines, which those are all up on our website, when grace period registration is, when the last day to register and all that good stuff, they can come to our office on election day and they can register to vote and cast their ballot if they have failed to either change their address on the registration or just didn't register to vote in a timely manner.
You know, if the truth were to be known, where would you stand on the business of people who can register at their polling place? To me, I don't see how that can be safe since we talk about voter fraud, you know. I can't see how...
In Illinois? You jest.
You have to force yourself to believe that.
Yeah.
Well, the joke amongst election authorities is we call it the voter fraud bill. I mean, none of us are pleased with it, but it's a mandate, and we have to deal with it.
Oh, I realize that. that.
But the checks and balances, I think, is kind of what you're referring to.
Yes.
The larger counties, they have poll books, and if they don't have poll books, they have to buy poll books because they need to be connected to the system so that they can find out if that person's registered to vote anywhere else. Now, in our circumstance, it's easy for us because we are in, the person would have to come to our office when they register, and it immediately bounces off the state site to make sure.
Right. But in the polling place, for instance, I could come to your office and register and then go to my precinct to vote and register there, because there wouldn't be time.
In a bigger.
Yes,
Right.
if I lived in Chicago, pretend.
Sure.
There wouldn't be time to get the message from the clerk's office to the polling place.
No, my understanding is that those larger counties are working on software to avail them to, when they input that person's name, it'll bounce off the site, and they'll know whether or not that person is registered or not.
There's another expense.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of expense.
There's no free lunch, And all this stuff costs big bucks. I'm sure this election that we're having in the 18th is going to cost big bucks. Yes,
It
Bill,
occurred to
I'm
me,
sorry.
ladies and Jim, that in a situation like this where you have a special election that's caused by, for whatever reason, that if there are some legalities involved and the person has to go to court and is found guilty from whatever the charge may be, frivolous or real, but if in any event they're found guilty, it occurs to me that perhaps part of the judge's sentence would be to have them responsible for the cost of the election to the citizens of the state.
Oh, there's many counties that have written to the congressman, the former congressman, basically saying, hey, we'll take any of your money you have left over in your campaign account.
Yeah, right.
Logan County did not write that letter. Our state's attorney called Speaker Boehner's office to find out what steps could we take, because we have no representation right now. So he called Speaker Boehner's Speaker Boehner's office to find out what steps could be taken. However, we understand that Mr. Schock can use that money for his legal defense.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So there probably won't be any money left over anyway.
Probably not.
That's going to be very messy for it's all said and done, I think. It occurs to me also, Judith, that there's a lot of complexities involved in preparing for an election. And the one sacred right that any citizen has is to express their views one way or the other in matters of importance. And historically, we just don't get many people out to vote. The one thing where they have, and there's a lot of planning goes on before regular elections, let alone working out a special election, which is what you've been working on now.
Yeah, the hardest part about this one was trying to make sure our polling places were available for those days.
Yeah.
Because one's on a Tuesday, this one coming up in July, and the next one's on a Thursday.
That's a kind of a funny business.
Yeah, so, we just...
Ours not to question why. Ours but to do or die.
Exactly.
So what we really wanted to get into today, I think, Mrs. Turner, is you have received an appointment recently of some significant note. It speaks to your dedication to your profession. Specifically, tell us what that appointment is and what your duties will encompass in that appointment.
Well, sure. It's the OSCE, which is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, is what it is.
And from your mouth to God's ears, we should have that.
It's very broad what's underneath that organization. They oversee all kinds of things, from human trafficking to democracy to elections, monitoring boundaries, like in the Ukraine and things like that. But the division that I'm volunteering, and it is a volunteer situation. It's not paid, no.
Now, this is a non-paid position for which you have volunteered.
And what it is...
Will expenses be paid for
Yes.
you? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah. It's not like the luxury cruise to Europe. It is in countries that are new to democracy, that maybe it's the first time they're having an election. They need election observers individuals who have somewhat of the knowledge of how an election's run, how it's prepared, and things of that nature. You go in about 2 weeks ahead of time and observe the process and how they're getting ready for the election, and then you actually observe the process itself, and then report back to the officials through the OSCE after you're finished with that to tell them what you saw, what you didn't see. You don't do any, if you saw some voter fraud, you don't stop those people. You report that, but you can't have any contact with
You're an observer with no official responsibilities or duties.
Yeah.
So that they can clean up whatever missteps they have
Right.
before the next election. Now, how many ambassadors, for lack of a better word, go in a group to
That's a good word.
a
Yeah,
country?
I guess it would depend on their population. The next one was in Albania, and I don't remember how many they were needing, but they're from all over the world. They're not just from the United States. The United States has a seat at the table because they are part of the OSCE. But you might be paired up with someone from another country, and you go as a group and do the observing.
This would be a great cultural experience for you, as a matter of fact.
Actually, when my daughter did a semester abroad, I guess when she was a junior at U of I, and the last part of it, she went to Vienna, and she actually had a class at the OSCE. And we
she did?
Yeah, and I had gone there to visit with her in Vienna, and we walked right past it. Who knew?
So you had a nodding acquaintance before
Yeah,
they
it was
contacted you
interesting,
then.
yeah.
Very.
Well, they'll remember you when you come back.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I think so. Now, when will you be able to make your maiden voyage
I
here?
don't know, Judy. It depends on when they have their elections. And there's 2 in July that, of course, I have my election here.
Right.
So we'll just have to wait and see when they offer another one. And
Now, the venue to which you will travel is, you said off air out in the office. You're going to what country?
well,
Do you know for sure?
no, I do not.
I see. Oh, I misunderstood
Albania
that
is
conversation.
having one,
Albania,
but I didn't apply for that because
see.
I couldn't go at that time.
Oh, I think you ought to apply for some esoteric place like going to Paris. And,
No, that would be good.
That would be good.
I don't think they have any problems there, so I guess I won't be able to go there.
Is there any other, getting back to the election business, is there any other new legislation involving the elections that will be coming up, special elections or regularly scheduled?
Yeah, the only other thing that's changed is the way we talk about absentee. No longer do we have in-person absentee. Now that is just called early voting. And the only kind of absentee we have now is by mail absentee. So when you come in to vote, if you're just strolling downtown Lincoln and you want to vote, you can just walk in and vote. It's not absentee no longer. It's just called early voting.
And that has opened now?
Yes.
For the July 7th
Yes.
one? Okay, so they can come to your office Monday through Friday?
Correct.
8 to 4:30?
That's right.
Okay.
What we need to watch here, Judith, is we don't have any absentee sponsors. And to make sure that we don't have absentee sponsors, we'll let Mr. Ash flip a few switches and dials, and we'll pay our obeisance to our sponsors. And right back live in the studio, if we can get the idle chit-chat and get back to work this morning. We appreciate very much. I say this again and very sincerely. Sally Turner is a busy lady. She's giving the taxpayers more than their dollar's worth up there in the courthouse, and she finds time to come and help us and talk to us.
You defy the Illinois stereotype.
I will say, I think all county employees do. You know,
Yes.
my office works very hard
We're
at
lucky
what they
here.
do. Yeah, and
I know they do. That whole place up there
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
square works very hard.
We've got some
and that's
dedicated
why
people.
I've always been of the opinion, maybe erroneously, I hate to admit that, but that the closer your tax dollar stays to home, the more bang you get for your buck.
absolutely.
The farther away geographically it gets, I'm sorry, but the trickle down effect just
Did
doesn't
you know
work
she
very
was
well.
that profound, Jim? I tipped my
Did I please you?
my French beret to you.
I agree, Judy. You're right.
Yeah.
It makes you more accountable.
Oh, yeah, because I'm going to run into you, And if I thought something, I could say something. Yeah, but I have no quarrel.
I don't know.
I wanna-
Somehow, I don't know why it segs into this in my weak brain up here. But speaking of our courthouse and all, the other day, some time ago now, Mark McDonald in his great stories in Illinois Stories that comes on PBS on Channel 8, and he was in the John's Chambers down there in Springfield. We spent some money down there, rightfully so. That building was an old building, and they
It was
did
a water building, I think, wasn't it? A water, something water.
Yeah, they had a lot of damage and so
Yeah.
forth. Anyway, and Justice Garman conducted even around the building. You and I ought to go down there sometime and see that building. It's just gorgeous. Just gorgeous, and something the taxpayer can be proud of, and you certainly don't mind seeing money spent to maintain a historical facility such as that. So
Our building's lovely too. It's I believe it's the second largest courtroom in Illinois.
Is that the third floor?
Yes. And it's like
It's good size.
and it's theater type seating. I
Yeah.
mean, back then when they did that, I was really
One of the
smart.
things about that courtroom that I thought was so interesting was that under each
Yeah.
of the chairs, there's a little rack.
Hat rack.
From the good old days when everybody wore a hat that they could stick their hat in there. Now, if you put on a hat, you keep it on. Rain, hail, sleet, or snow,
Oh, yeah, sit
dinner.
down.
You know, I started seeing that before I opened all the adjourned meetings, all the voting meetings for the county board once a month. That's all I need. Anyway, I've been starting to say, gentlemen, remove your hats. It's just, to me, before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, I just think that needs to be said.
Oh, I definitely do, and it's a shame that people need a reminder
Yeah.
to do that, but they do. And I know when Judge Daner was up there on 3, he insisted that the people not wear the muscle shirts.
Oh, sure.
That they dress appropriately
I
when
can
they're
remember,
coming.
I worked in the state's attorney's office then when Judge Daner was up there. I think that's when it was. Anyway, there were extra suit jackets hanging right outside the courtroom. In case someone forgot their jacket, they would use one of those suit jackets and put it on and go in.
Well, there are times when you must put on your Sunday go to meeting for certain things, and we're getting away from that just as fast as we can run, I think.
Oh, I don't want to get started on that because we have about 20 minutes left, and I might take up 23 minutes of that talking about how we slipped in that department.
Yeah.
But the court decorum is I think that's a must. I mean, respect
That's right.
from the bench down through the rest.
We've got
of
to
the,
show
yeah,
respect
yeah,
in
yeah,
this world for something.
Yeah.
Just something. Well, let's talk about the taxes,
Sure.
since we just touched on that very briefly. The tax bills
Sure.
that you can be looking forward to.
Let me start out with...
Well, I don't think there's that.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward
Did I
to it.
misspeak?
Let me start with how that comes about.
Yep.
First of all, the last Tuesday in December, every taxing body, every park, school, library, village, municipality, they all submit what's called a levy. They submit that to my office if they're within Logan County. And what they do is they say, I want X amount of dollars to run my school, park, library, whatever it is.
Right.
Then that gets filed in our office, and it has to be filed in our office in order for us to give them tax money. So if they don't file, that would be a severe problem because they wouldn't get any of their money.
Well, you don't want to lag behind. then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The assessor's office, what they do is they compile the assessed value of all of our parcels, all of our homes, everything that's in each district. When they're finished, they submit an abstract of all those parcels to the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois reviews those and gives us a multiplier. Sometimes multipliers, we did have a higher multiplier, I think it was last year, if I remember right, to get the value more evenly throughout Logan County.
Now, the value, please define the term.
The third of what your home is worth. You
So
get
the-
taxed at
Assessed value.
33, 33 and a third.
So a third of my house in Lincoln and a third of my friend's house in Atlanta. Okay.
So they add all those worths up, and then then it comes to the county clerk's office. The assessor shifts the file to the county clerk's office, and what the county clerk's office does is their job to figure out a tax rate, and the extension to the districts. So we take the levy that's provided to us by the taxing body, divide it by the assessed value of the tax district, and come up with a rate. Then we take that rate and extend it out and see if we can give them the money that they asked for, that the taxing body asked for. Let me just take a moment right then to tell you, this is why odd-year elections are so very important. Because you're voting for people that are levying your tax.
Gosh, we must remember, please make a note to repeat that each time before we have, because the judges nearly outnumbered the voters at this last election. That was important.
Oh, absolutely, it sure is.
Every election's important. I don't care whether it's a church treasurer. It's still an election in that particular body.
So after that procedure is done, the county clerk's office, we also have to do what's called PTEL, a property tax extension limitation law. Not all of our tax districts are under PTEL. Some aren't. If they overlap with another county, such as, I'll just use Mount Pulaski, for instance. District 23 overlaps into Macon County, into Menard County, and into Sangamon County, and into DeWitt County.
Holy Friday.
Yeah, so we have to get the values from those counties, the worth, as part of our calculation. But because they overlap in those counties, some of those counties never put property tax extension limitation law on the ballot. Therefore, they're not tax capped. Mount Pulaski 23. So we treat Mount Pulaski different than what we would District 27, because District 27 is tax capped. There's a lot of stuff that goes into all of this, and I don't want to confuse you with all of it. But we also have enterprise zones and TIF districts that go into that mix.
TIF districts, did you say?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tax increment financing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it. And it takes us, I have one of my deputies in my office, Teresa Moore, and I do the tax extension, and it takes us a good 2 weeks to compute and recompute, and you have to check for bonds and all. There's so much that goes into it. It's hard to even fathom. But I think most taxpayers probably don't know the process. And the process is assessor, develop the value, tax districts tell us how much you want, county clerk figure the rate and extension, and then the treasurer sends out the bills. And the treasurer, she's going to get our information about a week later than she normally does. Our treasurer is Vicki Dugan, and she does a great job. And she'll be getting the tax file probably Friday or Monday, and then she'll be having a due date soon. So if I were to plan like I normally would for my taxes, I'd probably plan on it being a week later than it was last year. That's about it, when they'll be due. She'll set a due date soon.
I can't imagine how you do all that in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, but we're running an election at the same time. With 5 of us.
In case you get bored, right? Yeah.
To further confuse things, way back, Judith, and even probably before Mrs. Turner was born, they had personal property tax. And the assessor would come to your door and knock on your door and visit with you about the things you owned. If you owned a boat, had 3 goats in the backyard or whatever, and we paid a personal property tax. And it was a pretty nebulous thing, very subjective. You just tell the guy what you had or didn't have, and he accepted your word at that. And and rarely went to do around poking the closets to see if you had anything. But that was an interesting time, and that was an appointive job. Somebody was a personal tax assessor.
Well, our real estate taxes are bad in Illinois.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
we have
They're the worst in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
We
I
have the
heard.
most taxing districts of any state.
That's right.
And, maybe that's something that needs to be looked at.
Because we have the most levels of government. There is no state
Most
that has
levels of
more
waste.
levels of government and waste. Yeah, you mentioned these caps, and that some of the District 23 territory doesn't have tax caps. Now
Correct.
that would not inure to the benefit of the taxpayer.
Right.
That would be to the benefit of the tax district.
Correct.
How come, don't they vote for that?
Yes, but in that case, DeWitt County has never put on property tax limitation law on their ballot.
Well, why don't the people say we want that on our ballot?
Before Mrs. Turner answers that question, we've got somebody on the telephone. Put your head
Oh,
down.
I'm sorry.
Sally. Well, I just found out too. So
Okay.
yes, go right ahead, caller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, I was.
Maybe.
False alarm.
Maybe they got to. Maybe
She's there.
Tell you?
Me?
All right. Yes, go right ahead, please.
Okay, I was wanting to know why the real estate tax is due in July and September instead of like every 6 months.
Okay, the question was, for somebody who might not have, why are the real estate taxes due in July and September?
Well, unfortunately, hi, by the way, this is Sally.
Hi.
Hi. Unfortunately, I don't know because that's not I just do the extension part, and that would be through the treasurer's office. 732-3761, if you want to ask him that question. But I don't know. I know Sangamon County, they got theirs out like in May. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
All right,
I know it
that's
is
fine.
hard because when you're saving, it's hard to get hit, one
Yeah.
right after the other, and I totally agree with that. But I don't know. But you can ask Mrs. Dukin's office, and she'd be happy to tell you. I'm sure she would know that statute what allows her to do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome.
you heard it first here. This is the best clerk in 102 counties, and she said something I don't know. I'm nonplussed with that. Well, that's exactly the right thing to do. If you're not sure of your information, just tell them right up front. I'm not sure of that. Good for you. We appreciate the caller, and we invite others, 648-5510. We have a young lady here in this office, in this studio, who runs a great office for the benefit of our Logan County citizens. As we alluded to earlier, we've got a good courthouse. We've got a lot of great people up there. Judy and I have had respect for Mrs. Turner for a long time because she knows how to give the taxpayers a bang for their buck. Is there anything you'd like to cover before the clock reaches that hour? We've got a few more minutes, Mrs. Litterly.
Well, I can cover a few more aspects of our office. One thing that I wanted to mention was in the summertime, we see a lot of genealogy. People that are taking trips.
Sure, I bet.
And it makes it difficult on us when we're running an election at the same time because we don't have enough people to do those things. But I have a great person that's been in my office. She works at Lincoln High School, but when she gets off work, she comes to our office, and she also comes in before work. Her job at Lincoln High School is Tanya Conrady, and Tanya does a fabulous job with genealogy. And people can email her, that's on our website, and if they need further assistance, you can get on our website and ask for great-granddad's birth certificate or a marriage license or whatever it is. And then sometimes, if you can't find it, she knows another step because she has dug and dug and dug, and she knows what she's doing. She'll take another step and try and research and find out more information for you.
And she just does this as a volunteer?
No, I pay her, yeah.
Oh, that's a
That's
good
fair
idea.
enough.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
fair
sure she
enough.
appreciates that.
Well, that is a job that we just don't have time to devote.
Right.
Well, it's a special unto itself.
Yeah, and people are so excited when they are doing their research.
Oh, yeah.
And I would rather it be enjoin them in their excitement than us saying, oh, okay, look, we don't have time, you're going to have to wait. Instead, she just really enjoys it herself, and she does a great job.
You know, as you get older, genealogy becomes more important. And, boy, it's really important to me. Seriously. I'd like to ask a question for the 648-5510. Is anybody, I've been too cheap to pay anybody online. Has anybody had any experiences with genealogy.com or whatever the website may be?
Yeah, what is that? Ancestry.com.
Ancestry.
Actually,
Thank
I've
you
got
very
on
much.
that before, and it's very interesting.
And how do you find that?
Well,
I'm too cheap to pay the money for it.
If you go to Ancestry.com, then it gives you all kinds of things, like records of ship records and things like that. You can find relatives, and someone has probably already done part of your research. Someone from the Gossett family or the Busby family or something, and it links you to what they have already done. And you can publish what you want to publish to say, yeah, people, you can look at what I've researched or not. And it's very interesting. I think that maybe there's a trial. You can try and get on and do that.
Well, we might get a raise. We could try to.
I've got a big manila envelope full of things from my great-grandfather Saul. And I'm very proud to have that, but it's all written in Norwegian.
Really?
So it's it's impossible for me to read what it says.
Well, I know somebody could decipher that for you next
Yes,
time
you
he's
do.
here. That's right. That's
Yes,
a good
you
idea
do.
if you want to
Hey,
take me up on that.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to this OSCE, excuse me, for just un momentito, please. You said that the outfit as a whole also deals with human trafficking, which brought to mind these 200 schoolgirls that were kidnapped, and they've not seen them for over a year. Now, how would the OSCE look into this? I don't know that ISIS would be happy to share anything.
I don't think they engage in the criminal activity part of it. It would be the education ahead of time and the prevention part of it. You'd have to look that up individually, Judy, but I don't think they had any part of that. One thing I did note that since I've signed up for this, I get constant emails from OSCE about monitoring. And a big thing of what they do is they monitor that Ukraine border. And I'll get emails that'll say, convoy of 50 Russian trucks did this, or convoy of people crossed the border. I mean, it's constant. So they have constant watchers for those individual instances in the Ukraine. But I have never seen anything about those children and those women and children that were taken through the OSCE. I'm not sure what group handles that.
Well, in the first place, so much of the business that's going on isn't like Europe either.
True.
It kind of falls over into
Yeah,
Asia.
that's true. You're right.
Yeah. Maybe that's the difference.
When you're called to, when you will be called to monitor or supervise, whatever the correct word is, these elections, well, it'd be a matter of a week or 10 days or
2 weeks.
2 week period.
Oh, you gotta pack your skivvies and go then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would be like a probably 2-day trip to get there, because I'm sure you don't get the luxury cruise on the way over, so you probably have to do a lot
You
of
don't
hopping.
think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, you ride in the back of the
You'd be in the
airplane.
cheap seats, huh?
Yeah. The questions that they ask you are things like, are you comfortable with sleeping in rough terrain and things like that? So, one of my friends, the Kankakee
Let's have
County
that
Clerk,
defined.
Bruce Clark, he's the one that kind of got me into this, and he had done it before, but he served in Afghanistan.
Oh, he did?
That'd
Yeah.
be tough duty, my
Oh,
friends.
don't go there.
No.
No.
So anyway, that he said it was extremely interesting, but it was a little scary for him. So.
Oh, yeah.
But that's been years ago, before all of this. But
it'd be interesting if you have time. It'd be interesting if you keep a daily journal of your activities, and it might make a really interesting story when you got back.
you're right. Well, actually, you submit a report when you're done, so you would have to journal anyway.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yeah.
Our guest this morning has been Sally Turner, well known to the taxpayers of the county.
And voters.
And the voters. The thing of it is that Judy and I'd like for the voters to be better acquainted with Mrs. Turner and the scope of her duties in that office. We have a pitiful turnout in Logan County. And
Judy, ask about that.
Yeah, do you want to just take a flyer at when we had this last election that involved school boards, park boards, etc., what it might have cost per vote basis?
Yeah,
just for the nuts of it.
You mentioned that, and I can't remember. I'm thinking we spent somewhere in the area of, I'm trying to remember how many ballots we had cast. Wasn't very many.
It had to be pricey at any rate.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I can't really
don't
give you
be
a good
sorry.
figure,
Please,
but I bet we
that was
spent...
kinda-
well, it isn't like you didn't have any figures running through your mind day in and day out up there.
Oh, yeah, the tax extension figure is what's in my head right now, is
Yes,
where we're going
exactly.
with that. But, I mean, it was... We've talked to the legislature about, what can we do in order to change these things? And one of the suggestions that they had mentioned, why don't we put them all together, which is put April in with March.
Yeah.
Which is okay, except for the fact that we're the state that has so many taxing districts. So if you were to do that, let's just say in DuPage or Lake or one of those areas, you'd have the mosquito abatement district, you'd have the water district, you'd have all the parks, all the libraries, all the schools, all those splits, plus you'd have governor and comptroller and all that stuff. So your ballot would probably be 5 pages long. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem? Probably.
Do you think that there's any chance that in their infinite wisdom they might streamline Illinois a bit?
I don't know.
Are politicians streamlining?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's their game and their rules.
Yeah.
Well,
And there's a lot of focus lately on local government. From the state looking down to local government and saying, you take more ownership of it and you're going to have to pay more money because the state doesn't have any. So maybe this will be a time where we need to come up with some
Well, we close this morning with a quote that unfortunately is going to fall on the ears of those who really don't need it. Those who really ought to think about it won't understand what it means anyway. Father Theodore Hesburgh of Notre Dame fame, that would be Notre Dame for those who are true purists. Father Hesburgh said, voting is a civil sacrament. Ponder that. Thank you for Viewpoint, Sally. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.